Chris.
Hi, I'm Ritchie.
Welcome to the Serviced Accommodation Podcast. So today we're going to be talking about property setup, and we've always broken this really down into three different areas, haven't we, Ritchie?
Yes, yeah. So we'll start off with admin and utilities. We've got the physical setup, and then you've got the background stuff, technical setup.
And you know, they're very distinctive tasks really, and quite often they're performed by different people, so we've always found it useful within our business to kind of break those down into different areas.
Yes, yeah. But we start off with the admin and utilities because some of these need to be set up well in advance prior to the property going live.
And what's the most important one, Ritchie?
Internet? Yeah, internet, it's the most important because they take their time to come and set it up, you know. Yeah, it's ridiculous. We've had to wait a while, and we've had to use the 3G dongles or 3G Wi-Fi devices. Not very reliable, and it can be expensive.
Limited data.
Limited,
Nowadays, people expect to be able to stream Netflix, sports, everything in your apartment, and that can eat the data really quickly. So that is number one thing, isn't it? You've got to deal. Cross the line, first thing you're doing is arranging your internet.
Before you even look at things like your budget, no?
Well, hopefully you've done that before you signed the deal.
So set up your budget.
But I think that's something, you would do in advance. You know how much you're spending on everything, and getting that set in stone exactly how much you're going to be spending on everything then means that as you go through the setup process, you need to be actively recording exactly how much you're spending, so you know whether you're under or over budget. And I think even with the experienced operators, it's very rarely that people are actually being disciplined around budget and recording their spend as they go through.
So after setting up your budget, you then make sure that you have the right contracts in place with the landlord or the agents, whoever you're working with, to make sure you're allowed and permitted to do what you're going to be using the property for.
And obviously it's a really important part of the setup process, because without the right contracts in place, you're not protecting yourself, you're not protecting your revenue, you're not protecting the money that you might be spending on that particular
property. You're not protecting your guests either.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, it's an important part of the process, just making sure that you're getting the right contracts in place. And we've got a whole episode about that coming up, haven't we, soon?
Definitely, yeah.
So we won't dwell on it too much today, other than saying make sure that you're protecting yourself and your guests and your money by putting those right contracts in place.
And after setting up things like the contracts, and then setting up things like your broadband, because like we said, that is one of the most important utilities to be set up well in advance. You then jump onto things like council tax and other utilities. So it could be council tax, or depending on how the business is set up, could be business rates. And then you've got other utilities like the water, the electricity, the gas, and then TV license. But you've got another take on TV license, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you've got multiple properties in a block, then obviously you're eligible to use the hotel TV license, which is the same price as a normal TV license, but it's actually valid for up to 15 different units. So you can have a block of like 12 flats with one hotel TV license, which is, so when you're getting the TV license, you need to think, either A, is it eligible for a hotel TV license now in terms of will I save money, and B, are you likely to take on kind of extra properties within that block at a later point? Because if it's not going to cost you any more money, you might as well get the hotel TV license in place. The other thing I think which gets forgotten about when you're setting up utilities is making a note of account numbers, because boring though bookkeeping is, it's an incredibly important part of your business. I speak from experience when I say if you've got bills which are coming out and you don't know which property they apply for, it can be an absolute nightmare, can't it?
Yes, reconciling it can be a nightmare. It definitely is a nightmare,
And they don't like telling you what account numbers, what do they?
If you phone up the council, ask them, so we've got this one here, details this. Could you please have the account number? No, they just won't give you that information. All you have to do is then stop, not pay it for them to send out a bill.
Well, that was their actual advice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you cancel the direct debits, we'll send you a letter.
And then you know what property they apply to. So we learnt the hard way back in time.
So absolutely fundamental when you're getting stuff up. Keep records of everything. Keep it all in one place. Exactly what the council tax account number is, water, gas, everything like that. Because it'll make the bookkeeping setup, which is an important part of the admin setup, very, very easy. So it's very rare that you take over a property and not have to do some level of work on it, isn't it?
Yeah, you always have to have a snagging list on there.
Yeah, even if it's, you know, just painting a little bit here or replacing the cupboard door, that kind of thing. There's usually little bits and bobs which need to get sorted right.
Yes, yeah. And we tend to build our snagging list on the layout viewing, when when you're viewing for the layout, what's going to go here, what's going to go there, and things sometimes have to get moved around. Even things like aerial sockets, where it has to be extended to another wall because the layout of the room doesn't quite work with the sofa bed coming out and the TV was on that wall. So yes, that's part of the things we had on the snagging list when we do the layout viewing.
And bedrooms as well, of course, you always want to have plugs which are right next to the beds.
Yes, unlike most hotels where they have a plug socket all the way there, you know.
I think it's so you actually get up in the morning, because if you want to charge your phone and use it as an alarm, then it's on the other side.
Is that what it is? Oh my gosh, yeah, very silly though.
No, I can't stand it when that happens. So again, it's an important part of the layout when you're doing, like you said, your kind of layout viewing. You're thinking about what furniture's going there, what needs changing round. Am I going to be able to deliver this?
Yes, yeah. So once we have a snagging list, we then arrange for the work to be carried out well. Our interior designer is in charge of that, you know, liaises with the maintenance teams and then gets the work done and then signs the work off before we go live. And before the property's cleaned up, before going live, but signs the work off. Yeah, and as soon as the work's signed off, we then have a deep clean first and foremost, because there's lots of dirt. If there's been drilling and stuff being moved around and furniture being delivered, there's obviously going to be dirt in the property, and we tend to have a deep cleaning around there.
But it's also much easier to do a deep clean when there's nothing in the property than after everything's been installed and it's ready to go live, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah. So there are advantages, like you say, because I know you're very pro getting the deep clean done before the furniture arrives, and that is a very good idea, because some of the properties where you've got the heavy beds, some cleaners aren't comfortable lifting the beds or moving the beds too far. So when the property's empty before furniture's been delivered, it's always good to do a deep clean. But then you've also got the dirt that people bring in when they're delivering stuff, you know, when stuff is being installed, when the drilling's going on and that. So yes, there are pros and cons to both.
I think the deep clean straight away, followed by a top-up clean before guests come in, kind of makes sense.
Funny enough, we've just done one this weekend gone, and I got a call from the property manager who had received a call from the cleaners like, ask Ritchie, this property is still dirty, as in they still got furniture boxed, as in the beds are on their sides. And I was like, but it's easier to clean, isn't it? Do a deep clean now. Like, but we're going to have to clean again before, the property manager was like, Ritchie, they said they're going to have to clean again before the property goes live. I said, more money for them. It's going to be a quick clean, but then, it works out better because the property's a lot cleaner. And after you deal with the admin, the utilities, we then move on to the second area, which is the physical setup of the property. And physical setup is actually physically setting up the property, be it the layout and configuration, where things are going to go, where the TV is going to go. We don't tend to deal with that physically ourselves. We've got the hospitality manager, interior designer, who tends to do that for us, isn't it? We give them actual physical guidelines as to what they should be doing, but then they've got free reign around those guidelines to do what they want to do because they're good at their job.
And it's around maximising bed spaces generally,
yes, it is,
isn't it? Although it's always going to depend on your target market.
Yes, if you're dealing with high-end guests, then it's not about maximising the bed space, it's about the quality. But with our level of our guests, which are mainly contractor-based, it's maximising bed space.
So probably should have said then is it's about making sure that if someone else is doing it for you, they understand the requirements of your avatar, because that's really what interior design is about. It's about practicality as much as appearance, isn't it? It's making sure that the property is laid out in the right way with the right facilities for what your guests need.
So once we've actually got a specification of what we're ordering, it then goes on to the stage of ordering the items. So first and foremost, things like furniture and utensils, bedding. Is it more financially viable or more financially beneficial to rent the items or physically purchase them?
Because there can be advantages to either and in the situation, can't there? You know, we've got some client properties where they purchase all the furniture up front, and other ones which rent. And again, it's very much going to come down to your business model, how you're doing things, as to what makes the most sense. A lot of the time, rental is a great option.
And the good thing with rental as well, most of the time you have to deal with one supplier. If it's things like furniture or the crockery, things around the property, it's usually one supplier, but then you've then got that one with, should I deal with more suppliers to get the better pricing, or should I deal with one supplier it's easy on delivery, it's more easy to organize around the property, and you know that if anything goes wrong, you're dealing with one supplier kind of thing, yeah? So.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leverage element is very important when you're thinking about this, particularly if you're looking to scale, or if you're looking to do this at volume, then making sure that you're not having to, you know, sit around waiting for deliveries to turn up, etc., is a big thing. So ordering from a single supplier, and it doesn't have to be, you know, rented in order to order from a single supplier. Does it? You can purchase outright as well, and then they can come along, install it all for you, take away, you know, old furniture, or, you know, exactly, packaging, big thing.
Yes,
creates a lot of packaging, doesn't it, when you're ordering an entire property worth of stuff.
Yeah, speaking of assembling items and installing items, if you order from one supplier, they tend to do that work for you. But if you order from various suppliers, you then have to get your handyman or your maintenance team out to install and physically set things up for you, you know, and assemble furniture, unless you want your property manager over there, which you don't. Yeah, we have our maintenance guys who do that for us.
So it's an important part of the model to actually think about how are you, you know, actually getting this stuff together and ready for your guests.
I've spoken to some people who say, I prefer to do it myself, but you think to yourself, how much time is that going to take out of your business? What else could you be doing to bring more money in or more revenue streams or whatever in your business, as opposed to but I'd like to learn how long it takes before I pass it on to someone else. Okay, that's fair and fine, but then make sure you then pass it on to someone else in due course for all the other properties. Yeah, and then we've got things like linen. Yet again, we touched on it just now. Renting it or purchasing, there are pros and cons to both.
I think on this one, a lot more often it kind of makes sense to rent than purchase, because the cost of good quality linen, especially if you get 3 or 4 sets, can be, you know, well into £400 or £500 for an apartment, and therefore renting, where it's, you know, I think it works out for most of our properties about £10 a month to kind of rent the linen. It just, you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. It depends on what your cleaning and laundry setup is, but also, you know, most laundrettes, if they do rental, then they prefer to actually rent the linen themselves, because it's consistent quality. They know what they're supplying, etc., etc.
And the other thing with actually purchasing linen outright is, what people don't think of later on is, if you had the linen for a few years or so and it's getting old, the cost of disposing that linen, you know, getting it away, it can be a lot of linen, as we learned ages ago, a year and a bit ago. It can be a lot of linen to just be picked up and go and disposed of. That's where, and then after you've ordered installation and everything else, then we have our interior designer goes back to the property to dress the property, or she does it as it's a step-by-step process, as the maintenance guys or when the delivery guys come over, things are put over there, but then she does the final checks and the final dressing to make sure that the property is presentable before the photographs.
Which is an important part of it, because actually probably the dressing makes a lot more difference to the photos than the actual furniture does. Yeah, and of course the photography is such an important part of the listing, and it's going to drive people in, you know, that you want to make sure you get that right. And
it's got to be on point.
Definitely.
So once the furniture's in place, we then get our interior designer to pop in and do the dressing. So the dressing is just dressing the property up and setting it up and marketing it to our particular avatar.
Yeah, so how would you describe dressing as opposed to furniture?
Dressing is like having a certain picture on that wall, having like certain items, you know, like glass shelves, you've got flowers over here. It's just appealing, making it homely, as opposed to just a property, making it feel like a home.
It's such an important part of the photography as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And in fact, such an important part that it's really important that the photography is supervised as well, like to make sure that you've kind of got everything laid out in the right way.
Yes, yeah. So interior designer attends the photography session with the photographer whilst the photographer is present, to make sure that they're getting the right photos and the right shots.
Yeah, it's amazing how we've occasionally had it where the photographer turns up, you know, to do the photos, but the interior designer isn't around, and the results you get are not nearly as good, are they?
Yes, we had to get them done again, but the photographer was okay, they didn't charge us for that, but then they had to do them again because they weren't marketed to our avatar.
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway on that is always supervise your photography.
100%. Even though they're good at what they do, always supervise them.
It's little touches, isn't it?
Yes.
How often do you look through photos and the toilet seat's up? It's just, like, why would you do that? It makes no sense, right?
The other one I almost died over was cables where we hadn't got the trunking in as of yet. So when the photographs got taken, the trunking hadn't been put in as of yet. And they took a photograph and it was just cables hanging underneath the TV. I'm like,
I remember that one.
Really? Seriously?
It's like you've got this lovely looking room with a nice wall mounted like 55-inch TV.
Perfectly dressed. Cable over there. Really? Come on.
So yeah, definitely important to supervise the photography because it's such an important element of the marketing.
100%. And whilst the property is being set up and everything's being delivered and that, you're going to have neighbours wondering what's going on within the property. So it's always, we have it as one of the steps on our property setup list, where it's always good to notify the neighbours of what you'll be doing and bringing them into the picture of what you're going to be doing with the property, so that they know and they're fully aware, as opposed to just people just turning up every day. And so when you speak to neighbours about it, property manager gives the neighbours their telephone number, so that if they have any problems, any issues at all, contact us directly on this number, so that they feel they've got a say in what's going on.
And of course, it can backfire a bit, and they can be calling you all the time about this, that, and the other. But it's still a lot better than the alternative, which is that they're not contacting you at all. For instance, if there's a party, or they're getting really pissed off and getting in touch with the council, even though you're not doing anything wrong, they don't necessarily know that. And so it's the kind of better of both worlds, isn't it? They can be contacting you when there's a problem, even if there's a chance that they might end up over contacting you.
Yeah, I don't know. We had one property where the neighbour got my number from the previous landlord, and it was just a fact where they were just calling me like it's silly o'clock, but then they've got a property manager's number now, and I got a report from the property manager this weekend that we had a booking where they cancelled the booking as soon as it was made because they picked up on it and they thought, no, it's not going to work, these people are going to have a party. And then these people still turned up because they got the booking confirmation email with the property address. And straight away, and they turned up and they knocked on the neighbour's door. They were lost. They thought it was the right, and they had crates of beer. And straight away, the property manager received the call and he was like, oh, not to worry, those people aren't staying in our property. We've declined their booking. We've already got people who've been staying there all week. So so it can have its benefits as well.
Yeah, you get the actual feedback and rather know about stuff which is going on in the property. And
it's good where they feel they have a say in what's happening and they have a voice and they can help out. It's their neighbourhood. They've lived there X amount of time. They just don't want people just changing. People don't like change. So if they've got a say or a voice in there, you bring them into the journey with you.
Yeah, you can imagine if your home and then suddenly the next door is going to become a serviced accommodation, then it's actually much easier for you to kind of know and understand if someone knocks on your door, has a chat about it, can answer some questions, says, if anything happens or you want to chat about anything, here's our number, etc., then after a couple of weeks of various different people moving in and out, you're like, well, not quite sure what's going on here, but clearly it's not tenants moving in, is it? It's a very different psychologically finding out in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And the other thing is you've actually got a set of eyes on the property 24/7, where you don't have to physically have staff members or the maintenance team or security guys going over there checking on the property on a regular basis. You've actually got a set of eyes on the property, so
yeah, it's a very important element to it, I think.
Yes, And then after the property has been set up, before going live, we obviously do the compliance checks, things like fire and safety. You've got the health and safety, you've got fire escape routes and that, you've got the fire blankets in the properties. Do we have fire blankets? Yes, we do. Yes, no apologies, sorry. So after setting up the property and the photography, we have the fire safety final checks on it.
Fire risk assessment, right?
Yeah, FRA, it's got to be done, after fire risk assessment, we then might have the fire blankets in there. We don't tend to have fire extinguishers in our property. Reason being, we don't want people actually trying to tackle these fires. With a fire blanket, it can be a small fire. People can take fire blanket for something small, they can just deal with it. Whereas, but it's good to carry out fire risk assessment, so you have escape plans of where people go, assembly points of where they assemble if a fire were to break out, and they clearly know the fire escape routes.
Yeah, very important, and legal requirement, of course.
Yes, and the carbon monoxide detector, smoke alarm. Yeah, it's very important.
Yes, making sure that everything's working correctly with your fire detection systems, as well as analysing the risk.
And monitored and checked on a regular basis as well. Yes, it's part of the audits. They have to be checked.
Definitely. Definitely. And the other element of that is health and safety, risk assessment, which doesn't have to take massive amounts of time, but it's important that you look at it as a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because otherwise there could be slip risks, for instance, in the bathrooms, and if something happened and someone got hurt, then they probably want to look at your health and safety risk assessment to make sure that you'd actually thought about this, e.g. proving that you're not negligent. So again, it's a quick exercise to do, but very important. You can look at what the risk might be with that property, and maybe look at overcoming some of those risks, whether it might be supplying bath mats in there so that people don't trip on a wet floor, whether it might be warning people that particularly hot water might be coming out of the taps, that type of thing, to kind of make it a safer environment for people.
Yeah, even though people can see that it's red and that's blue, but people will always pick on stuff like that. So it's always good to make it.
Plus, let's be honest, there's always some properties where you turn the hot tap on and it's scalding hot already. So I think there can be places where you do really need to be highlighting particular risks to people.
And then we have good quality control measures, which is kind of like the final step of the physical setup process, where we check that everything's fine, sign everything off, and then we have one of our team members physically stay in the property, so that they get the feel from a guest point of view.
Yeah, we said that very early on in the podcast, didn't we?
Yes.
That one of the most important things is to stay in your own properties. I'm sure most people listening and watching still haven't done it. Go and do it now.
Hopefully they have.
But it's such a fundamental thing, isn't it? Because like you say, you get to see it now from a guest perspective rather than an operator's perspective. Find out if you've missed anything, or the little things that you might not notice when you're going around the property. A creaky door, something that doesn't shut properly, or kind of any little thing which...
Or positioning of certain things, like this should be positioned on right next to this room as opposed to all the way down there, because it doesn't make any sense. It's impractical.
Until you've actually done that as a guest yourself, you might not be thinking.
You will be surprised what you pick up on. Actually, you won't be surprised. You're going to pick up loads, but you will be surprised what you pick up on. It's quite a lot. Definitely. And it's positive changes before the property goes live. The third area we look at is technical setup. So this could be going on in the background this will be going on in the background whilst the property is being set up, the physical side of things are being taken care of. You'll be setting up the technical side of things on the background.
Definitely. So, getting the property set up within your property management system, which might be Toki, Keygo or something else. Getting that all in there, and of course on the OTAs as well. I think what's quite interesting that we've found, particularly in kind of recent years, is that just getting the properties up on the OTAs, even if you don't have final pictures or anything like that, you can actually start capturing bookings straight away.
Yes. So like you touched on, Chris, making the properties live in advance is very, very useful, because capture the bookings right in advance. But OTAs tend to want you to have photographs on there, so it's always good to advise on the photographs that these aren't the actual photographs of the property. The property is actually still being set up as we speak. We've had that in our properties, but we've still had loads of advanced bookings.
Yeah, and I think with Booking.com it's less of an issue as long as they're kind of representative of the type of quality. With Airbnb, you need to be very, very careful on that.
100%,
as we've said before, people are expecting the exact property they see photos of. So it's probably a bit more risky to do this with Airbnb, I would say, unless you're making it extremely clear, the property is in the process of being refurbed. This isn't the final picture, but this is representative of the quality of what the property will look like when it's done. And also not kind of overreaching, because it'd be very easy to put some amazing temporary photos on there and get lots of bookings, but of course you're going to get a bunch of complaints. People actually turn up at the apartment.
That's going to take us back to that episode on review complaints and bad reviews, because that's exactly what happens. Yeah,
absolutely. You've got to set the right expectation there.
You can't overpromise and underdeliver.
No, but I mean, this genuinely can have a really big impact, can't it, when you're setting up a property. So, for instance, Alex Hillenbrand, who had appeared on interview, because he came out to Barcelona with us, from the Quick Start program, but he actually took a booking on the day that he picked up the keys for his first apartment.
How amazing is that? The day you physically pick up the keys,
but not just that, but it was like a 5-week booking, something like that, and it actually paid 2/3 of all his setup costs in one go. So it's so worthwhile making sure that you've got your listing up nice and early, even if you're thinking, well, no one's going to book until there's photos on. Well, it might just be exactly the right area, or there might not be demand, there might not be supply for what they're looking for in the area. It might be quite busy, etc., etc. So it's always worth getting it up as soon as possible, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. The other example is Sam Cooper, who, property went live. Before property went live, he was waiting for the professional photographer to come in and take photographs. And he used the MVP rule and minimum viable product. And then he took photographs with his iPhone, and then put the pictures on there. And then straight away he got the bookings in advance. Well,
absolutely. Progress, not perfection. Is
That's
that phrase we use quite often, isn't it?
Yes.
Definitely. So as well as the OTAs, you're going to want to make sure that the property is listed on your website if you have one. If you're using, for instance, one of your PMS generated ones, then make sure that you've updated it to include the latest property as well, because you never know who might be your returning guests looking at your website, finding your new property and booking in with it that way. So as well as the website, making sure that you're adding it to your kind of bookkeeping and accounting systems. For instance, we use Xero, don't we? And we actually have a very thorough system of exactly how to set up your bookkeeping in SA for Xero.
Process, so to speak, isn't it? Yeah,
an entire end-to-end process, including reporting, etc., which we're going to cover in an upcoming episode of the podcast. But for now, making sure that you've added it to your bookkeeping system is very important, and also created your reporting template, because you're going to want your monthly reports showing the performance of the property, and make sure you've got a template for that up and ready for your accountants and bookkeeper. So we've talked about the different things which need to get done, so let's have a little think about the kind of roles and responsibilities for that. What we said at the start is that certain things can be done by different people, Ritchie, so how do we approach that within our business?
With admin and utilities, we tend to outsource these, be it the PA or the VA, because it's an unskilled role, so anyone can actually physically do it. So it's just a person on the other end of the phone making phone calls, setting up contracts, setting up accounts. Things like the council tax, things like utilities bills, broadband, that can all be a source.
It's not a high-level task which you should be doing yourself as a business owner, is it?
Not at all, no.
There's other people within the business or outside it who can generally do that for you.
Yes, yeah. And then we've got the physical setup, which we outsource. I mentioned it earlier on. We've got the interior designer, we've got the maintenance teams that we use for that. We've even got the delivery companies that deliver the furniture there to do that. And then we've got the photographer, and we've got one person who oversees that, and who's a project manager, and that's the interior designer.
Yeah, and different people might deal with that with different ways. So your property manager might oversee it, you might be doing it yourself. But what we found is that having, an interior designer brings two advantages really. It's someone to oversee the process, and someone to obviously make sure that the property is finished to the right level of specification for the target audience really.
Yes, yeah.
And that works very well for us.
Yes, yeah. And how do we deal with the technical setup, Chris?
It's not me. It used to be.
Yeah.
But again, once you've kind of got processes in place and you say to set this up, you need to do this and that, recording videos, putting together documents which kind of show exactly what you need to do. Again, it's a simple process to run through, albeit a technical one, and so you can leverage that out with anyone technical really.
Yes, yeah. It's good that you train the people and they know what they're doing, and then you pass that on to them. And it's a good thing that you just make sure where you say it straight away, you're like, oh, it's not me. It used to be you, but then it's not you, because you've learned to outsource. We pass that on to someone else, and your time is more valuable doing other stuff and generating more income for the business.
It is, and that's leverage, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the way you generally do things, is you write the process and you bring the people in to do it for you.
Yeah.
Based on that process.
Yeah, and then you monitor that process to make sure that, it still works.
Absolutely. So that's really the three different areas around property setup, isn't it? Admin and utilities, physical setup, and the technical setup. And so, if you're just getting started in SA, hopefully that's helpful for you to think more about what you need to be doing on the way to setting up the property. And if you're already established, hopefully there's some ideas in there in terms of how you might be able to leverage it more, rather than being quite involved in the setup process. It's probably one of the hardest areas of your business to actually step back from, really, isn't it?
Yeah, like I always say, the entrepreneur's curse. Where you've learned all the roles and responsibilities, and you can do it better than anyone else, we know that. But then, it is worth just passing on to someone else to do. Handing it over. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of the Serviced Accommodation Podcast. For more information, visit thesapodcast.com.